Everyone, and welcome to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we're going to be tackling a question that's pretty eerie, but also really captivating.
Yeah.
What would happen to our planet if all of a sudden, poof, humans were just gone?
That's a great
It
question.
makes you think, huh?
It really does. And we've got this great article to help us explore it. It's called How Human Extinction Would Change the Earth.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Uh.
It's a real thought provoker.
Mm-hmm.
And, it starts off by talking about this thing called the Anthropocene epoch. I feel like a lot of people have maybe heard that term,
Right.
but they might not really get what it means. So can you break it down for us a little bit?
You know how we talk about like the Stone Age or the
Yeah.
Bronze Age?
Mm.
The Anthropocene is kind of like that, but it's more like the Plastic Age. It's the period where human activities have become the dominant force shaping the planet.
Okay.
So it's everything from plastic pollution in the oceans to the changing composition of the atmosphere. It's all part of our lasting legacy.
It's almost like we're leaving our fingerprints like everywhere but on a massive scale.
Exactly. And what's so fascinating here is that this article comes out and says human extinction isn't a matter of if but when.
Whoa, okay.
Eventually something's going to happen, whether it's a natural disaster or a pandemic or something else entirely. That's going to wipe us off the map.
Wow. Okay, so then what, does the Earth just kind of like hit the reset button?
Well, that's where this book by Alan Weisman comes in. It's called The World Without Us. And he paints this incredibly vivid picture of nature reclaiming the planet. Think about it, without humans around to maintain them. Cities would start to crumble, fields would get overgrown, bridges would collapse.
Oh, wow.
All those structures we see as permanent would slowly get swallowed up by nature.
I'm trying to picture it. Like skyscrapers turning into mountains of rubble, highways disappearing under a carpet of vegetation.
Right.
It's almost like something out of a, post-apocalyptic movie.
It is. And Weisman points out something really interesting, is that the most lasting evidence of our existence might be this thin layer of plastic radioactive isotopes from nuclear testing.
Oh, wow.
And get this, fossilized chicken bones?
Wait, chicken bones? Seriously?
Yeah. According to the article, we raise something like 60 billion chickens a year for food.
Oh my gosh.
That's a lot of bones.
Yeah.
So future archaeologists might think that we worship chickens.
That's so funny.
Talk about a strange legacy. It really drives home the point. We think we're the dominant force on this planet, but ultimately our mark might be nothing more than a layer of trash and poultry leftovers.
It's a very humbling thought. It really makes you realize how temporary our impact really is. But speaking of nature reclaiming the planet, the article brings up Chernobyl. What's the connection there?
Chernobyl is a powerful example of just how resilient nature is, even in the face of, a major disaster. The area around the nuclear plant was heavily contaminated, right?
Yeah.
Yet wildlife is thriving there. And this isn't just some random occurrence. Chernobyl actually teaches us something much bigger.
Okay.
In a lot of cases, human activity is more damaging to the environment than even major disasters. Whoa, that's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
Yeah.
We tend to think of nuclear meltdowns as like the ultimate ecological catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that just being there doing our thing might be even worse in the long run.
Exactly. And the article contrasts the rapid regrowth in Chernobyl, which has a humid climate,
Right.
with the much slower decay of ancient ruins in dry regions like the Middle East. So what we learn is that climate plays a huge role in how quickly nature reclaims a landscape.
Okay, so nature would eventually bounce back,
Yeah.
but it would look different depending on where you are in the world.
Right.
That makes sense. But what happens to all the species that rely on us? Like the crops we grow and the animals we raise for food.
Mm-hmm.
What would become of them in a world without humans?
That's a great question. We've spent centuries breeding plants and animals to be completely dependent on us.
Right.
So take crops, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We've optimized them for yield.
Yeah.
Not for survival in the wild.
Right.
And livestock, well, we've bred them for docility,
Mm-hmm.
not self-sufficiency. So without us around, they would be in a very precarious position.
So they'd essentially be starting from scratch, evolutionarily speaking.
Pretty much. The article gives some vivid examples. Think about carrots.
Okay.
They would revert back to their wild ancestor. Queen Anne's lace corn would become teosinte,
Interesting.
which is a much smaller and less productive plant.
Mm.
And domesticated animals like cows and sheep,
Yeah.
they would be easy prey for predators. It's a classic case of survival of the fittest. The species that can adapt best will thrive while others will struggle.
Speaking of species survival, the article also talks about insects, specifically how they would explode in population without us around.
Oh, absolutely. And this is where it gets a little creepy, maybe even for you. Weisman describes insects as being able to mutate and adapt faster than almost anything else on Earth except maybe microbes. Without pesticides and human intervention, they would multiply like crazy.
Oh, God.
Imagine a world teeming with bugs. Kind of makes your skin crawl, right?
Yeah, it really does paint a picture, doesn't it? And, it's not just that there'd be more bugs. You have to remember, this insect boom wouldn't be some isolated event. It would have a ripple effect throughout the entire food web.
Oh, right. More insects means more food for things that need insects, which
Exactly.
in turn means more of their
Yeah.
predators. So you'd see this kind of chain reaction across like entire ecosystems.
Exactly. It's what's called a trophic cascade. And it's fascinating how removing one species, even one as impactful as humans, can trigger these complex shifts in the balance of nature.
Hmm.
And the article even suggests that, these shifts could play out for a century or more before a new equilibrium emerges.
100 years of ecological upheaval. That's hard to even fathom.
Hmm.
But it makes me wonder about the fate of our pets. The article touched on cats and dogs specifically. Who would have the upper paw, so to speak, in a world without us? Well, based on Wiseman's observations, it seems like cats have the edge. They're already incredibly successful as invasive species, all over the world. Their hunting instincts are sharp and they're highly adaptable, so they'd likely thrive in a humanless world.
So those cute little kitties are actually fierce predators just waiting for their chance to rule the world.
Yeah.
I guess appearances can be deceiving.
In a way, yes. Dogs, on the other hand, particularly the breeds we've domesticated, would face a much tougher challenge. They've become reliant on us for food and protection, and without those advantages, their survival would be a real uphill battle.
It's sad to think about, but I imagine those pampered pups would quickly become, well, lunch for wolves, or those feral cats we were just talking about. It's a harsh reality of nature, isn't it?
It is, but the article goes even deeper. It tackles a question that really sparks the imagination. Could intelligence evolve again on a post-human Earth?
Okay, now we're getting into some really interesting territory. Are we
Yeah.
talking like a Planet of the Apes scenario here?
Not necessarily. But the article does propose that baboons, they have some real potential. They're adaptable, they're capable of living in diverse environments, and they have these complex social structures. All of these factors theoretically could contribute to the development of higher intelligence over time.
Okay, so no baboons on motorcycles just yet.
Probably not. But who knows what evolutionary pressures might emerge in a world without humans? The article explores various theories about the evolution of intelligence. One suggests it helps species survive major environmental shifts, while another proposes it's beneficial for navigating complex social interactions. And then there's the idea that intelligence is just a sign of robust genes.
So it's not simply about having a big brain.
Right.
It's about how that brain helps the species thrive in its environment.
Right.
That makes sense. But even if baboons or some other species did become intelligent, would they create a civilization, anything like ours? Would they build cities and invent technology?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the article doesn't really give us a definitive answer, which I think is part of what makes this whole topic so captivating. It leaves us to ponder the possibilities. Wiseman does point out that, baboons, while capable, seem fairly content with their current lifestyle. They might not have the same drive to build and innovate that humans do.
Maybe that's for the best. I mean, look at all the trouble our intelligence has gotten us into. Pollution, climate change wars. Maybe a little less ambition wouldn't be such a bad thing for the planet.
It's a valid point,
What?
but ultimately, whether or not another species takes our place as the planet's, dominant intelligence, the article makes it clear that human extinction wouldn't mean the end of life on Earth. Nature is incredibly resilient. It would adapt, reclaim, and eventually find a new balance.
It's both terrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time, isn't it? To think about the Earth continuing on without us changing and evolving in ways we can't even imagine.
Absolutely. It really puts things in perspective. It reminds us that our time on this planet is finite and that, we have a responsibility to be mindful of the impact we're having.
It's like that saying, we don't inherit the Earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children.
Right.
We have to be good stewards of this planet, even if we won't be around to see the long-term consequences of our actions.
Well said.